This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Everything is good here, Let me see. My adventures in farmland. I have a lot of huge oaks out here, but there's a type of oak, and maybe some people will be familiar with this, especially live in a rural area and others are not. Live oaks I have a very, very old 100-year-old live oak, several of them, but I have another type of oak, which is called water oak, which are known to have very shallow roots and that they'll go down unexpectedly. That's exactly what happened. I'd gone to a concert, and when I got back, this must be 40 or 50 feet tall water oak had taken a nosedive into the yard. Barely missed my truck, which is it's under, because we went in another vehicle we have. Thank God, it was still covered, but still, and I have another shed out there. It just like came down, like roots and all. Okay, and then another branch broke off from another tree. In other words, the tree came down, but it wasn't from the roots. It was like a quarter up. I mean, talk about. And by the way, all they had was gust of wind. I'm in North Florida. There was no hurricanes, no, like weather alerts. And this is what happens when you go away. So I came back and I'm like, are you kidding me? We were driving in. We're like, huh? I had this huge oak. The only thing I'm really happy about is that it missed my truck and it missed my shed. But yeah, that's what I've been busy with. Like, talk about the unexpected. Country living is great and rural life is great, except when stuff like that happens. Except when that happens, and we're, I don't like taking down the trees, and I'm not going to touch my live oaks because everybody, first of all, they're like 400, 500, maybe 600 years old, and everybody I spoke to said no, they're really good. You can just trim the branches, but these water oaks are like, they're known for doing that, and we're already starting to look at the ones, that we look like, if this thing comes down, what is it? What's the damage? Because yeah, stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, that was my adventures for last week. Talk about the unexpected, and and of course, getting it cut down. And we have this huge burn pile because we have acres. I had to burn the burn pile that I already had, and then get this tree that was cut up, put it on that burn pile. So I have a huge burn pile, and then of course, the cold weather here has gone away, and I've got warm weather, and that the whole fun of a burn pile, a huge burn pile, is cold weather. I mean, what is it? First world problems. But anyway, guys, let's get on to the good part. The good part is who the guest is for tonight. This gentleman has been here before in Stories of the Supernatural. His name is Dave Spinks. He's a West Virginia native. He served in the United States Air Force for 8 years and went on to work as a federal law enforcement officer until he retired in 2011. Experience as a young man led to his interest in the supernatural. Since being involved in the paranormal, Dave has conducted several hundred investigations, having many hair-raising and unnerving experiences along the way. He is well known for his knowledge of all things strange in West Virginia and has investigated many of the most famous cases in the state, including the Greenbrier Ghost haunting and the Flatwoods Monster UFO case. Dave is a frequent guest on radio, television, and at conferences, and he just told me he just released a book now in October of 2022, only a few months ago, titled West Virginia Dogmen. Help me welcome him back. How are you doing, Dave?
Good. Hey, thanks for having me.
On the contrary, it's my pleasure. You know what? It was so funny when you told me that you had written that dog man because the other day I was writing an article about this is something that happened in the 60s in the UK, which is not really known for per se dogmen, but where they some boys discovered some. They're called the Hexham heads. They had dug up. I don't know if you've heard of them. They were like little balls, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that are carved. All right. Supposedly, when they bring these uh, little etched heads, they say they're about the size of a tennis ball. They start having weird stuff happen in the house. Blah 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 blah. Uh, they even the neighbors started having, but the neighbors next door, the parents where the kids lived, paranormal stuff is happening, like poltergeist activity.
Mm-hmm.
But the neighbors next door describe seeing first something that looks like a slash sheep goat man. It's either a sheep man or a goat man kind of version. It ends up going into the hands of a Celtic linguist. This lady's a scholar, she's an anthropologist. And believe it or not, while she has this, she describes having what she called a dog man. And then her daughter also saw it. All right. And it was like, in in this whole thing, now remember this, the last lady who's a scholar, she's a very well recognized, like credible witness. How's that? She was given these heads to study them because as an artifact, because they were dug up and they were thinking, this is dating back during the Roman occupation of the UK. And
Mm-hmm.
she looks up and she sees the exact description that we have of dogmen nowadays. And then a few days later, or something, she comes back and her daughter sees this thing jump the banister of the stairs of their house and go into the back. And she, as a matter of fact, she stayed in her room until her parents got back. She was a teenager then. All right. And then it
Mm-hmm.
tied into that back at the turn of the century, there's been no wolves in the UK for a very long time. They started getting all these livestock because that area is like a rural area of the UK in what they call Aldenstone or Hexham, which, by the way, I found out hex is the word for witch, a Saxon word for witch. And back around 1904, they had all these livestock being killed, like slaughtered
Mm-hmm.
and eaten. And they started thinking a wolf, but of course there have been no wolves. And there was some guy out there that had a young wolf that got away, and they were thinking, where did this wolf come from? Finally, they found the carcass of a wolf, of a large wolf, like it had been hit by the train. And the guy that kept the wolf said, "That's not my wolf. It's too old." Anyway, bottom line, the slaughter of the livestock stopped. Where this wolf came from, nobody knows. That is, and for some reason, this event 60 years later got tied into this dog man. In other words, that it was cursed. In other words, it was like some type of Celtic curse from from the turn
Mm-hmm.
of the century dating back. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was fascinating because I hadn't really heard. And I was wondering, I was going to ask you, when you started working on these dogman research, I mean, I know a lot of people think of the dogman like in as Bigfoot as like a real solid animal, for lack of a better
Mm-hmm.
word. But have you come across stories where it's solid, but at the same time it's tied into maybe some type of cursed land or cursed family or anything like that?
Yeah, in Europe alone, werewolf type creatures or dogman type creatures date way back. And in some of my research, I discovered that even in early tales, like explorers such as Christopher Columbus and other famous explorers were said to have seen these dogmen tribes, and these dogmen creatures were in there. They numbered into the hundreds, but they lived back way back in these very way back rural mountainous areas, and they were known to eat men and everything else, and they
Okay.
were considered very dangerous creatures. And there was supposedly a whole race of these creatures, and some of them actually were. I can't remember the name of the king off the top of my head that I found in the research, but they were said to have traded with this one particular king. For they would trade things for weapons and food and different things, And one of the most startling accounts I found was that Saint Christopher of all people was said
Right.
to have been a werewolf.
Right. I've heard of
And
that.
he was sorry for his evil doings upon man and wanted to repent and everything. And God took favor upon him and turned him into a human. And there's a few famous paintings of this, of him as a dog man wearing the saintly clothes and everything, and then another picture of him as a human, where after God transformed him into a human. So when you read, and these accounts go way back for hundreds and hundreds of years, even thousands of years, um, and even in modern times, if you subscribe to the ancient alien theories, there are what they call 20 and backers, right? And these are people that are said to have been trained as young children to go and fight various bad alien species around the
Hmm.
galaxy. And one of those races are these dogmen type creatures. If you watch the Gaia channel at all, they talk about it recently on episode 5. I can't remember what season it is, but they actually talk about some of these 20 and backers that have gone and fought these creatures. And they said it was really strange because they were the ones that this one particular man had talked about. Only one type of weapon could kill these things, and it was a large 50 caliber rifle, because they were sort of mechanical and
Really?
living tissue creatures. So very strange indeed. These reports and these accounts from various people from generations dating way back for thousands of years up into modern
That
times.
is
So
incredible.
you know so and there's let's face it, when you watch the Hollywood werewolf, the old saying says if you get bitten by one or scratched by one, you eventually turn into one on the first full moon after you've been bitten. So that
Hmm.
that's more of the Hollywood side. Now there's all kinds of other accounts and stories from various cultural backgrounds, like you were talking about, these artifacts that carry this curse, and if you
Right.
possess this artifact, you will become a walking canid type creature that eats flesh to survive. So you always got to take everything with a grain of salt. But when you look, the ones that really fascinate me a lot are the ancient accounts, because people didn't really they only drew and wrote about what they saw. You know, there wasn't all this fancy technology like we have today, and the ancient tribes, whether it be Native Americans or Celts or whoever, they
Hmm.
literally drew and painted what they saw and what they experienced. So when you look at those ancient accounts, I really take a hard look at those, because those are a lot more meaningful to me than more modern day accounts, because the paranormal, the supernatural, and everything else is pop culture now. And
Sure.
people are looking to get famous. They're looking to
Oh
for their
no, back then they
15
took
minutes.
it very seriously. It was
Right.
like,
So I mean, that to them that was straight pure evil, and they were
right,
dealing
you
with the
didn't mess around
devil.
with that. No.
Right. They didn't even like talking about it, because in their viewpoint it brought that closer to them. But at
It's
the same time, they would send out large hunting parties, just like you said in England. That's a true fact. They hunted wolves to extinction, and they virtually did that here in the United States too. Just now, in the recent past few years, the Timberwolves are making a huge comeback.
really.
Because of the fear factor of wolves. Wolves would, when wolves hunt in packs, they will kill people. In the old days, I'm sure they did,
Sure.
and they were massive. They're not just little. They're not like you're just average sized German Shepherd. Wolves are way bigger than a German Shepherd, and they are vicious. They're also beautiful creatures, and they're part of the food chain. And you know,
Yeah, but
um,
they hunt in packs and they can take down humans, or and of course they can take down
oh
larger
yeah,
animals.
oh yeah, they
So,
take down moose and elk that weigh 1,300 pounds or more.
mhm,
And eat them, because that's just what they do. But then you go to the supernatural side of things when it comes to wolves and everything, and that's fascinating too. If you talk about the hellhounds, there's a lot of traditions here in West Virginia that talk about these black dogs. There's also a white one they call the white thing, and I felt like I actually saw one of those years ago coming home from work.
okay.
But um, they got the hellhound stories. You make a deal with the devil, and then when the devil comes to collect, he sends his hellhounds to drag you to hell. And it's all supernatural related. And there's a lot of accounts here, especially on the border of Maryland and West Virginia. There's famous signs up where this one little community was having all their animals eaten, and people were attacked by this black vicious dog. So they hired this famous local hunter to go out and track this thing and hunt it. He found it. He took a shot at it. He knows he hit the thing, but the bullets went right through it and it didn't do a thing to it. So that's a supernatural account. And he was so distraught that he left and told them what happened and never came back. And on occasion here in West Virginia, I get reports sent to me. Hey, I was driving to work one early morning and I saw the biggest black. It was not a dog; it was a wolf cross the road right in front of me. So you know, there's all kinds of accounts going on about these strange type of creatures, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. Whether it's
Well, you know what?
Bigfoot.
That's exactly what you described right there. Back in 1904, these people they were losing so much livestock that
Hmm.
they were bringing their animals indoors, and they put together a committee. Like when the townspeople, that's how wigged out they were.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
we're going to go out there. They hired, like what you said, a big game hunter. First of all, they brought hounds. The hounds wouldn't track. Okay, which you would think if it was a regular wolf, wherever it came from, God knows they would track it. The
Hmm.
animal wouldn't track. The dog wouldn't track on it. They
Yep.
brought in a big game guy, known for his hunting. He kept saying, "Hey, I've seen it far away," but he would take shot, and he could never, like, it was one of those things that never got it. So he left with egg on his
Hmm.
face. And there was again people were basically hysterical when you start bringing in
Hmm.
livestock into your house. That means, and
Yeah.
again, with the death of this wolf that got hit by the train, supposedly it stopped. But there's, again, like you said, that air of supernatural. Like, this was
Hmm.
more than just a regular animal
Hmm.
that was killing so many animals. Because if you think, okay, well, how much can it eat? A lone wolf, you know,
Hmm.
and that there was something there that they just couldn't track it. They couldn't find it. They were finding they were seeing that something was killing that livestock, but and then it makes you wonder, like, what was really going on there, exactly like what you described, that there's something
Yeah.
otherworldly about it.
Yeah, I've got a lot of accounts in my book, just here in West Virginia of people. Like there was one from the '50s. This guy was a bread truck. He delivered bread, to the grocery stores and stuff. So he'd have to leave really early in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning,
Okay.
and he was on his way to a delivery. And this huge black dog ran across the road. He hit it. He felt it hit the truck and went under the truck.
Okay.
So he looked in the mirror and he seen the thing rolling, and then it stood up on two legs and it was massive.
Oh
And
my God.
it just he freaked out and he's looking at this thing and then it just disappeared, like just evaporated. So you have all kinds of accounts like that as well. And there's just a ton of them, and they date way back, and like you were talking about in Europe, so France, Germany, England, Romania. There's so many traditions in those countries that deal with werewolves or dogman type creatures. And of course, a lot of those people migrated here to the U.S.
Sure.
Early on in early days, and they brought those traditions and folklores with them. So, of course, it stands to reason that you know these maybe cursed families that have these curses are experiencing these things. Then you have to take a whole nother aspect into effect, and that is Native American traditions and folklore that talk about shapeshifters.
Yes.
People that can witch doctors or shaman in those tribes that are dealing with bad juju or bad energy, and they're considered
Yes.
bad shamans or bad witch doctors, whatever wording you want to use,
Hmm.
are delving into the dark arts, so to speak, and they actually can take the form of anything they want once they become fully engulfed in their spell work and everything. So. But there's always a catch. They have to murder someone in the tribe or someone in their family to get that. It's a blood ritual, and it's all an evil doing, and become are able to shapeshift into those type of creatures. So
Well,
it's
yeah,
pretty. Some of it's pretty.
there's like a
And this.
family, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, like a lineage thing.
Mm-hmm. So,
And what
and a lot of it's pretty dark and creepy too, man, when you
Yeah,
really
yeah,
get
no,
in and
and that's
dive
what I'm
deep into
saying,
it.
that there's the version of the dog man, which is it's like an animal, just an animal. Like, let's not nothing supernatural kind of in a way. Weird, unusual, like where did it come from? But
Hmm.
there's another version which there's like an overlap. Like, yeah, it's physical, but the appearances or disappearances or experiences with them have some type of paranormal flavor to it. And of course,
Hmm.
you've heard of this thing that Skinwalker Ranch, where the family that was living there in the 90s, one of the first encounters they have there is with this large wolf-like
Hmm.
animal that's not
Which
scared of
that's
them.
right, which that's a huge Native American area, right? So
Yes,
stands to reason it could have been a shapeshifter, could have been a skinwalker, could have been numerous things. And the natives said the local natives there don't even like going in that area because of the bad juju or bad energy in that area, and it's very bad, and they stay away from it. So
right. That
you
yeah,
know,
that's from before the hype, that it got the recognition. From what I understand, historically, that area that was like the place where you don't go there. Don't
yep.
go there.
Well, Native
Uh,
Americans are known for being able to read the land, read the energies of a
yeah.
location, and they actually, they go to those places of good energy on purpose because they want to have good energy and they want to thrive in
Mhm.
their lives and be able to hunt and fish and do what they do. So they would migrate to those areas, and they are very good at finding. They knew, hey, that's a bad area. We don't go over there. We go over here. So and that's all around the world, whether it's Aborigines or ancient
Yes.
North American Native Americans or countless other tribes around the world, Celts and everybody else. So
Right. But what's really funny though is that Native Americans, once they recognized that an area had something bad or something bad, they left it alone. They didn't go investigating. It wasn't like,
right,
oh,
yeah,
let's find out what it is or let's have a no, they were like, don't go to that forest, that mountain, that river, that lake, stay
hmm,
away from it,
oh
and
yeah.
don't even talk about it.
Oh
Contrary
yeah,
to what
most
people do
tribes they don't even
nowadays.
want. Yeah, most tribes won't even talk with you about it because
Yes.
they feel that if they talk about it, it brings it closer to them, and they don't want nothing to do with it. So
Right. In other words,
you
by
know,
talking about it, it's gonna they're gonna get attention from whatever that entity is, whether
absolutely, yep.
it's and let me ask you, when as far as the because there's people that think that the transformation of humans, like the werewolf is like a human into a wolf, and then or the werewolf, and then the dog man is totally apart. This is like a creature, this is what it is all the time.
Hmm. Yeah.
you know
So yeah, there's different theories on that stuff. Um, it's very hard to make that decipher that. So but there is research. You can research it out there, and there's definitely a distinct difference in dogmen versus werewolf type creatures. And they talk about that. You know, the original story is this king and his two sons uh, killed this kid or this man, and as an offering to Zeus, and fed it to
Mhm.
Zeus. And Zeus, once he realized that they killed this person and fed it to him, he got really agitated and he turned them into werewolves. So,
Okay.
because he's like, you can't do that. You don't kill, we don't eat people. So,
Right.
and that's an old ancient story too. And I talk a little bit about that in my book. So there's so many ways you can run down the rabbit hole with these creatures, but it's also at the same time, it's fascinating because there are these accounts and these stories go way back into human history. And even today, there are actual werewolf cults out there that
Really.
think they are werewolves. There's people out there that think they come from a wolf lineage of beings, and they fully practice and believe that they are werewolves. And they're active to this day, and they're all over the world.
Let me and it begs do they eat, are they cannibals? I hate to say it, but nowadays anything is possible, you know that, right?
Yeah, you got that right. And who knows what they do in the away from public eyes. But
Yeah, sure.
I wrote a little bit about that in my book too. And one thing's for sure is that the werewolf legacies and the dogman legacies and stories are never going to go away. They've been around since early man, and they're not stopping. So there's accounts
Right.
reported every day. There's a lot of researchers and investigators out there putting the time and work into these things, into these cases. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
I was wondering, this is something when I was doing the research, Linda Godfrey, she wrote, which she passed away
Hmm.
last year, she wrote the Beast of Bray Road, and she's, wrote a slew of books about,
Hmm.
um, and one of the books, I want to say it came out in '06 and '07. She talks about how close to that area in Wisconsin where the Beast of Bray Road was sighted, on this ranch, they discovered, like a four like a basically, they think it might have been on like a pedestal under a thing, but basically it was carved with a face. It looked like a human wolf face. How's that? Okay.
Hmm.
Almost like, maybe at one point it was, I don't know if this is the right word, like the top of a column, and maybe it was repurposed and they found it like half buried in that ranch that she knew of. And then they found a couple more, right?
Hmm.
And she was saying, why would anybody use this carving, you know? From the
Mhm.
turn of the century, and they were looking at, like, the way the concrete was poured and everything. That's why they were saying there was probably around 1900 that it was done. That was such an unusual thing to put into the carving or decoration of what would be the top of a column, which is it was like a wolf, but not a wolf head, it was a wolf man face, right?
Well, like we said, there's those modern day. I would consider that a more modern day wolf cult situation because it was done
Right,
with modern concrete and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean these things are out there alive, and what
well,
these things are out there. Even there's military units. The Nazis had a whole wolf unit, werewolf type unit they call dog soldiers, and so same with some. There's some Native American tribes as well, and there's actually some criminal organizations that I wrote
really?
about that use dogmen or werewolf type titles who actually believe they are from a werewolf lineage and everything else. So it's pretty fascinating stuff. And when you think about it, um, and there's some over in the Ukraine and Ireland, they're all over the place. So when you think about that, and they true wholeheartedly believe they are descendants of wolfmen or
Okay.
dogmen type creatures. So it's pretty fascinating stuff that they're alive and well and thriving today as we speak all over the world.
Right.
Now it's not as publicly known as other things, but it's the information's out there, and if you just take a little time and look it up, you'll find some interesting stuff. And here we have a very well known saint in the Catholic Church, Saint Christopher, is said to have come from a
I know, that's
dogman
so
type
funny.
species.
Harry's like, everybody thinks of him as like the patron saint for
And
policemen
they
and
don't. It's not like
travelers.
they try to cover. Yeah, and they don't they don't try to cover it up. So what's that telling us here? It's a well known fact. There's famous paintings of it and drawings. I mean, what's going on here?
Right. Well, and it even makes you think, like you said, what if, let's say, with what Linda was, because to her, what was remarkable was that where they've discovered this was close to where the sightings were of the Beast of Bray Road. And like
Hmm.
you said, are they commemorating something in their lineage? Were they doing some type of supernatural invocations for a wolf and brought something into this dimension? I mean, we could go
Mm,
down that road.
right.
Or do they have, how can I say this? What if there's a lineage and every once in a while you'll get somebody that it manifests, genetically as where they turn into one? Why not? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like what you were saying, not necessarily the Hollywood version where you have to get bitten and
Right.
survive to become a wolf man. Basically, it's a genetic, like a recessive
Hmm.
gene kind of thing
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
hey, cousin so and
I've
so is the one.
Right, and I wrote about that too. There's several different ways. Some believe it's, in your genetics, and some believe you have to be bitten by one or
Hmm.
both. So, it's just fascinating stuff, and it's one of the more weird kind of a taboo topic out there a little bit. But, when you talk about black dogs, devil dogs, hellhounds, and werewolves, I kind of jumbled it all together because I think it's all interrelated in some way, shape, or form. So, you know, um, just to do a small book on it here in just the West Virginia accounts that I know
Hmm.
of, and then the ones I've actually investigated. And and here's another thing: some of the reports I've investigated in sightings are from well-to-do people that are. I'll just give you an example. One of them is a prosecuting attorney in a county here in West Virginia. So,
Okay.
when you got someone of that caliber coming out saying, "Man, I know what I saw. This was what it was, and it wasn't Bigfoot. It wasn't nothing. It was a straight up 8 foot tall wolf looking creature standing on two legs." So, you have to step back and say, wait a minute, this guy has a lot to lose by coming out saying this.
Sure.
Why is he wouldn't make this up? Something really changed his life, and by him having this encounter that he feels the inherent need to come out and talk about it. So, you know,
Right. Yeah, he's
so
putting a lot on the line, his
you're right.
reputation.
I mean, come on, you think about that. And that's the same with any of these strange creature sightings with law enforcement officers and various people in the community that have had these encounters, school teachers, doctors, lawyers, whatever. Um, People in a certain status, they just it's hard for me to believe that they're just going to come out and make this up, being who they are and what they do for a
Yeah, they're
living,
gonna think
because
like, "Man,
they have a
the last
right.
thing
They're
I
gonna
want is to be known as that guy," you know?
right, and they're going to send them to the head shrinker.
Yeah,
So
it's like, "Oh,
I
yeah,"
mean,
and, that's the kinda thing people years later will still remember.
hmm
Now, let me ask you, I've heard of that thing of the black dogs or the hellhounds. I've heard of sightings, especially in the South around, like, crossroads, where there was a thing as far as black magic or the devil and, coming to
hmm
claim you,
Well,
and there
yeah,
was
that's a
sightings of
famous
black dogs
story.
at
Well, there's a
crossroads.
famous story about the musician Robert Johnson. So he made a deal with the devil at the crossroads to become a famous musician, and he did. Um, they said he was an average player when he was first hanging around. He disappeared for a while, and it was said he went down to Mississippi to the crossroads, made a deal with the devil, and when he came back, he was a phenomenal musician and singer. And then if you look up any of the stuff, he was like hailed as all that back in the day, right? So,
Right,
and then, however, and he wrote that famous song, "The Hellhounds on My Trail" or whatever it's called, but it has to do with the hellhounds coming to collect his soul for the
right,
devil
yeah,
because, and it's pretty spooky stuff if you think about it. So,
sure.
um, and that's what it's said to do. You make a deal at the crossroads, and then when the devil comes to collect, he sends the hellhounds after you.
Right, that they're like the
And it's said
fetch.
that
They're
the
the
you
they're
know the
hungry.
hellhounds also are said to guard the gates of hell.
Yes.
So there's so many different things with them.
Have you heard of, and I've heard also, this is for dogmen, that they've sometimes seen around cemeteries. Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
And I'm thinking,
yeah,
okay, that's, and the reason why I say that is that, I mean, besides the obvious cemeteries are where dead people don't
mm,
realize that there's a lot of ceremonies and rituals, dark magic that are done
mm,
in cemetery grounds or around it that
mm-hmm.
makes me think, somebody doing maybe some type of ceremony, summoning,
Sure,
and
why not?
whether they're looking for the dog man comes through, and maybe that's
Right.
why you have that, what makes you think, even if it's a physical thing, what are the true origins of it, as far as, and I'm sure you've heard also of the coincidence of UFO sightings and cryptid sightings, like people that follow it say, you know what, we have an uptick in UFO sightings, and then we also have more sightings of cryptids.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of accounts like that out there. As colleagues and stuff I've talked to over the years, it would seem that. So I'll just lay it out like this. So it wasn't that long ago where you were either like a cryptid guy or a UFO guy. You couldn't be
Right,
both.
yes.
Like if you said UFO and Bigfoot together, you'd be ousted from both communities, right? However,
Sacrilege. Yeah.
right, so as an investigator, you're really not doing your due diligence if you're not researching everything and investigating anything from outside the box, looking in and looking at all aspects. Well, it wasn't long before some people started doing that. I was one of them, and other folks out there. But we started noticing that at various times there'd be a rash of UFO sightings in an area, and there would also be a rash of Bigfoot sightings in that same area at the same time, and vice versa.
Interesting.
So a bunch of us started talking over the year. We're like, man, what is up with this? And then we started backtracking other cases, famous UFO cases, famous Bigfoot cases. And sure enough, not in all of them, but in a lot of them, same thing was going down. There was rash of UFOs sightings, and then there's at the same time there's a whole bunch of Bigfoot sightings and other creature sightings too. Not just it happened during the Mothman wave here in West Virginia too. People reported seeing a the Mothman flying in the air, which is a winged humanoid creature with 10-foot wingspan. But they also saw UFO lights in the sky, strange lights or strange craft at the same time. So what's going on here? Are these some sort of alien beings that are coming out of these craft, or what's going on with all this stuff? So as a researcher and investigator, you're not, like I'm saying, you're not doing your due diligence if you're not looking at all aspects of this and trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, because we really don't know what we're dealing with when it comes to this stuff at most points yet. We often leave with way more questions than answers almost every single time, because there's so many different aspects to this stuff.
Yes, yes, and like you said, there's people that now, like before, it was you were either in one camp or the other. All right.
Hmm.
And I hate to say it, the UFO guys were more science based. They were like, hey,
Hmm.
that Bigfoot stuff. And the other day, something I heard, which was kind of interesting, was this lady. She was saying how when she was really young, she said she thought what she had seen was a Bigfoot. She says, when I was that age, I didn't know anything about Bigfoot, much less dogmen, none of that.
Hmm.
But she says, as I grew older, I recognized, and I always thought that what I had seen was a Bigfoot. But she says, but after I saw what Dogman, I realized that really what I saw was a Dogman. She says because of the snout, of course,
Hmm.
the Bigfoot is
Big
more
difference.
flat
Yeah, it's a big
face.
difference.
But she says that back then when she saw it, it was like big and this and that.
Hmm.
She just looked at it and she said, I always thought that what I had seen was a Bigfoot. But she says, when I saw a Dogman, I realized, no, what I really saw was a Dogman. It makes you think how many people, especially if it's a little bit indistinct or dark, sometimes mistake one for the other.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
as far as
yeah.
the
There's a
height.
lot of mistaken reports out there. What people could have saw was a Bigfoot, but they thought they saw a Bigfoot, but it was really a dog man or whatever. A lot of times these people see a bear will stand on two legs too. And when it stands on two legs, it looks a lot different than when it's running on all fours. Let me tell you,
Oh,
I've
oh,
I've seen plenty of bears in my life here in the woods of West Virginia, and when one stands up, I mean, and especially like say if it's standing in the middle of the road at night when you're driving and you only get a quick look at it, then
yes.
it freaks many people out. So a lot of times these sightings are misidentifications of just simply a bear, but you never know, until you have that up and close personal encounter with something, then
Well,
you
yeah, it
know what the
depends
difference is.
why when and you hear a lot of dogman sightings sometimes having to do with roadkill or
Hmm.
people were like, no, it's not that I thought, like, in other words, it wasn't fuzzy. I could distinctly see what I saw. In other words, I'm not
Hmm.
mistaking it for something else. Um, and I tell everybody, you know, the thing is that, and that's another thing, which I know there's a lot of people out there that don't say their stories because it really believe it or not, contrary, I think some people could see a Bigfoot and it would wig them out, like, but I think that a lot of people when they see what's a werewolf or a dog man, it kind of does something to their shift in reality worse than if they saw Bigfoot. Like
Well,
everything
I
in that.
mean, yeah, of course it would, because we have all been, in my opinion, we've all been brainwashed to think a certain way, that these things don't exist, when in fact
Yes.
they're discovering new species on this planet almost daily.
Mhm.
Most of the world's oceans have been barely explored, and they're finding new land animals almost all weekly. So, you know, I would cut myself short before I said, well, these things just don't exist, because the Kraken was thought to be a myth by all these old
Yes.
sailor stories and accounts. And lo and behold, wasn't that long ago, Japanese sailors caught a 65-foot giant squid. If that's not the Kraken, I don't know what is. I mean, that's
Yes.
massive.
And you know what?
So,
When those back in the 15th, 16th century, when these galleons, everybody thought that these sailors were just making stuff up. When they would talk about these sea
uh,
monsters and the
right.
Kraken. It's like, no,
Mhm.
they would describe what looked like they're like, "Oh, okay, these guys are exaggerating. They've been out at sea too long," kind of thing. And come to
Yeah.
find out, they do exist. They're very
Oh,
deep
yeah, it was
water,
like that
but they
one
do
fish,
exist.
that prehistoric fish they thought was to be extinct, but it's not. They've recently caught some alive and well, specimens of it. So, there's stuff out there. I mean, there's there's stuff all over the place that, we have a lot of woods in this world left, not as much as we should, but we're cutting them down at a rapid rate. But,
Yeah.
and the oceans, I mean, there's stuff that's hiding, I mean, that's just,
Sure.
look at the Amazon rainforest.
Oh,
There's
there's places for them
temples.
to hide. There's plenty of
Yeah,
places
and there's
for
there's temples
them
down
to
there.
hide.
They can see the tops of them sticking out of the trees, but they can't get to them because it's so rural and so hard to get to. I mean, it
Yes.
would take them months to go through there. So who knows what's hiding in those jungles too? There's been reports of 100-foot giant snakes down there
Yes.
for centuries, and that eat men, that eat people.
Right,
And
because I've
different.
heard these snakes don't have a finite, you know how they have certain species that the most they'll grow is X, but from what I understand, I don't know if it's the boa or the python or which one, that they have no finite. They'll keep growing as
Yeah,
long as
like
they're alive.
anacondas too.
Like
Anacondas
anaconda.
yeah, they get massive. And then
Yes.
every now and then you'll see a story in the news where a person was eaten by one of these things, and that's
Yes.
true. It's not fake. It's real. I mean,
Yes.
I've seen pictures even in the down there where you're at in Florida Everglades of these
Yes.
massive boas that got out
They
that
got
are breeding
big.
like crazy. They're
They had a
eating,
python hunt last
yeah, and
year.
they ate full size alligators like it was nothing.
Yeah.
8-foot alligator.
No, well, obviously because of the Everglades, the environment, they thrive in it, but they grow quick.
Hmm.
They had that python hunt. They put a 1 week where they were paying people to bring in these snakes because there's so many of them and they grow that basically they're doing a number on the ecology the
Hmm.
of the Everglades.
Yeah, they're
There's
eating
no other.
everything in sight.
Yes, everything, including the alligators in some cases,
Yep.
depending on the size of the alligator. So yeah,
Hmm.
no, the and the thing as I don't know if you've heard of this, that that they're well, I don't. When I say considering, for all I know, they already did it. You know what they did in Jurassic Park, where they basically they want to, I don't want to say clone or create the dodo and the what's that other the Tasmanian, the two species that were basically brought to extinction by man. They
Hmm.
say that they can re-engineer them. You know how in Jurassic Park they basically put it together from they're saying that they wanna do it, which means probably they already did it. And where I'm going with this is, wouldn't it be surprising if in some of these labs, even though I know there's the history on this goes back hundreds of years, but let's say where you've maybe have had some labs who have been tweaking with hybrids between humans and wolves. Why not? Let's go down that road, you
Oh
know?
yeah. I mean, well, there was one out there. What wasn't that long ago? They found this carcass out on Plum Island out there, in New York. And that's said to be this whole area where they were doing genetic testing and different stuff. And they
Mhm.
found this weird looking carcass that had like a beak nose, but it looked like a really big dog, but it had like a beak and all these. And there's pictures of it. You can look it up. And
Right.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes you'll see these weird carcasses wash up and nobody knows what it
Right, yeah,
is.
because from what I understand, that Plum Island, you cannot go on there now. You're
No.
not
Mm-mm.
allowed there. It's, like, off
No.
limits. Supposedly, they
Yep.
give all this reason why nobody can go there or visit it,
Hmm.
but, and I hate to say it,
And
but think people are realizing that even though there's certain laws or rules, not allowing them, you could put a lab in any of these, whether even in the US or any of these other countries, and you could do experimentation and do things that
mhm.
supposedly nobody's supposed to be doing.
Oh yeah, there's
Um
labs all around the world that are experimenting with cloning people and everything else, and it's been going on for a long time.
And that old, well, it came back out in the 80s, that, and as a matter of fact, it's the theme for a lot of these sci-fi movies, a super soldier, as in
Hmm.
a animal human, basically for war, for the purpose of war,
Yep.
something that's so ferocious that, you know, and when you look at it, and I hate to say it because a lot of times things are happening that you go, man, that was a movie back in the 80s and it was sci-fi. Where
Hmm.
you would think this is strictly the imagination of a great writer or producer in Hollywood, and sometimes you realize there's more truth to it than what you think as
Oh,
far as,
absolutely. Yep.
what they
There's the one thing
try
that people
out.
don't realize. There's a lot of messages in Hollywood movies,
Yes, of
and they
course.
always have bits of the truth in them.
Yep. Yeah, like,
So,
well, when the '80s when RoboCop came out, you remember?
oh
That
yeah,
was a great
yeah.
movie. I love RoboCop, the original one, and
Hmm.
it was and now it's like, all of a sudden I'm seeing, videos of these robotic little dogs with machine guns on their back. I'm like, "Huh?
Hmm.
Is what?"
Oh yeah, there's all kind of stuff. I mean, they've weaponized cockroaches and everything else, bats. I mean, dolphins. They've done all kinds of different stuff.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised that how the same thing that they're thinking, well, if we ever have a because of course, just in case what they want to use or put into war is something, whether it's robots or it's what they call a super soldier kind of thing,
Hmm.
tinkering. And, sometimes you wonder, what if the tinkering got away from them?
Sure.
Uh,
What's to say something didn't escape?
yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's
one
possible.
thing, or it's or maybe they're like, okay, we're gonna let these things go and populate and see what happens with them, and because I've heard also, and I don't know, Dave, if you've come across this, where sometimes, you always hear of the Men in Black showing up in with UFO sightings, but I've also
Hmm.
heard that around parks and places where there's been sightings of cryptids, Bigfoot and Dogman, where unusual agencies show up or portions of parks are closed off. Like all of a sudden, this interest in a supposedly
Hmm.
mythic
Yeah.
creature.
Oh yeah, it happens quite often.
Right, that
You'll
it's like,
see.
okay, what would you care if a bunch of campers came screaming out of the woods saying, "Hey, I saw Wolfman or a wolf thing," you know?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then you have all
Well,
these agencies scrambling, like, what would you care about this unless there's some
one of
truth
the
to it?
cases I thought was very interesting, and it, way back in 1982 when Mount St. Helens blew up, there was
Mhm.
multiple reports and sightings of from various people that said they saw military helicopters with these big nets under them, and they were carrying out dead Bigfoots.
What? I
Uh,
had not heard of that.
oh yeah, and then other people reported that they saw these strange looking people. They said that
Mhm.
were walking out with like soldiers and stuff out of the woods from after the thing blew up, and they had them in overcoats and hats, but they were all covered in hair. So what in the world's going? There was multiple reports of that, and so when you look at stuff like that, you're like, whoa. So, it makes sense in that place, where Mount St. Helena is, I mean, that's a really rural and rugged area.
Yes,
And,
yes.
I mean, when that volcano blew, it devastated that area, killed a lot of several people too.
Mhm.
And, if they're, and I'm sure it killed probably thousands of animals that lived in the area too,
Right, right. And
so.
you know what? You'll probably see animals you haven't seen before because, they're all hightailing it out of there as much as they can.
Mhm.
So
Right,
you're
and
gonna see
makes
things.
sense, if they're and that's a high traffic area, high reported area of Bigfoot sightings for many years. So it
Mhm.
makes sense. I mean, if you think about it. So, but who's to say? I mean, we weren't there, so we don't know. I mean, but you
Well,
know,
and that's the thing that well, it's a disaster and everybody's running around, and then you'll have some people say, "Man, I saw this really unusual thing. I was in the middle of getting out of Dodge, but wait a
hmm,
minute, I just,
right,
and but then of course, recently, yeah, people when I say recently as in, people have the phone and everything, but let's face it, if you're trying to get because there's a volcano exploding, like you don't have really time to go and investigate what were they doing.
right, you're getting out of Dodge. So,
It's a,
you know, but
it's
the
it's
one of the questions we get a lot is, well, with everybody running around and with all this technology in their hand, their cell phones and stuff, why aren't we getting more stuff? Well, we are getting a lot of stuff. However, the problem lies with you've got a multitude of people investigating these things now, and everybody wants to be the first one to capture
yeah,
something, right? So whenever there is some probably good evidence that's captured on a cell phone or a trail cam or whatever it may be, then others say, "Oh, it's CG, it's fake, it's debunked,"
sure,
you know, because they want to be the first ones. So I think there's a lot of legitimate sightings out there that people have captured, and they just don't even share them because of that fact. And it's a shame. Instead of everybody working together, you got a lot of people butting heads and all kinds of stuff like that. So, And then you have a lot of misinformation out there, put out by various government organizations and whatnot too.
Sure.
It's just like the whole UFO situation. Oh no, it's all doesn't exist. All of a sudden now they're coming out saying, oh yeah, there's
I know.
stuff flying around.
It's like,
We
that's
don't know what
weird,
it
isn't
is.
it?
So for them just to say that alone is very compelling. Okay, and
Right.
it's validation for people like me and many others that have been investigating and researching this stuff for many, many years, and written books about, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden the government comes out and finally admits, okay, yeah, there's stuff flying around. We don't know what it is. So what's that tell you? If
Well,
you
you know
don't know
what?
what it
And
is, it's not from this planet.
well, no, that yeah, it makes you, it makes you, I hate to say it, to be a cynic or to be suspicious, but it's like, man, after so many years of trying to disprove it, why all of a sudden you're so, I don't know. It kind of like personally, I'm kind of wary of
Mhm.
admissions. Like, well, okay, you're doing this now. Why? Why is that? You
Yeah,
know?
they're never going to come out and say, well, we've been lying to you for the last 100 years,
Right, right. But
because they
if it was
can't do
only
that.
lying, I've heard
But
that.
also they can use that as another means to do a false flag operation. Say, oh, we just got attacked by aliens. So
I've
you got to be
heard of
very wary of what you believe, what the government
well,
tells you.
and I'm gonna, before we go into that,
Trust me, I
yeah,
worked for them for 20 years. I know what they're capable of.
that's a great, and I've heard that discussed. But real quick, what you mentioned about as far as people competing, I think there's another set of people that, let's say let's say have a piece of land and you've got trail cams and you get something that you're like wigged out, but then you don't want the notoriety. You say the last thing I want is a bunch of people heading over here because I've captured something that is like, what is this? And guess
Absolutely.
what? They don't release that. They
No.
keep it because they're
Hmm.
like, the last thing I want is anybody, even the government at some point, depending on what kind of, proof they captured. The
Yep.
last thing I don't, not everybody's into, they know what comes with that notoriety, you know,
Hmm. Oh yeah, you
is
don't
like,
want thousands of people come tromping around on your land or whatever.
exactly, or, the drone or, none of this
Yeah,
nonsense.
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's hard to tell
And
what wealth of information that private citizens have that own a
yes,
lot of property. You're right. You're exactly right.
they're just like, you know what? I'll just keep it and that's it. And nobody knows
Hmm.
about it because it's going to become more of a headache. There's
I've got a lot of reports that I've been given and pictures and everything that I had to sign a paper with them saying I wouldn't release it, but they
sure
wanted to
want
know
the
from
location,
me.
right?
Yeah, they wanted to know from me what I thought it was and things like that. So there's stuff out there that will blow your mind. I'll tell you straight up.
Well, you
For
know what?
you know.
Mac Brazel, that cowboy, the one that originally that back in Roswell, later on, from what I found out, he was really sorry. He said that he was sorry. He said he ever came forward with that
Hmm.
evidence because it kind of like it.
Well, yeah,
He was affected. His
they
family was
discredited him
affected.
and they tried to ruin him and everything
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
didn't, and they threatened his family and everybody else that was involved with death, and it's one of the greatest discoveries of mankind.
He thought he was doing. He thought it was. He was. In other words, his mind was not ever thinking of the repercussions were going to be for him and for his family afterwards.
Right. And
You
to
know?
me, that's what makes it even more legit because,
Yeah.
he was thinking, oh my God, I got to report this to the military because this is not from
Sure.
here.
Yeah.
And,
From
but
what I understand, that weather balloon. They said that other weather balloons had gone down on that ranch where he was manager, and that he knew what a
yeah.
weather balloon was. In other
Oh yeah.
words,
He knew what it was. Yeah, absolutely. He knew the
and
difference.
yeah, exactly. And now getting back to what you were talking about as far as the false flags and the things of the that all of a sudden, uh, even people in the government have all been either abductees or contactees, or they've cited as like, whoa, 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 what you guys have been, basically, like you said, in some cases they've tried to make legitimate figures in the ufology field like look like crackpots, and now
Hmm.
you all want to be one of the crackpots. What happened? Why is everybody now
Right.
wanting to bring this to
Well,
the
I
attention?
mean, there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, they don't want to come out and admit that they don't have control of the skies. That's one because that creates a
Yes, yes.
panic. That can
Oh yeah.
create a panic saying, "Oh my God, what do you mean there's beings from another reality or another galaxy or whatever that
Yeah.
can do whatever they want to us at any time?" Because see, it all goes back to the whole narrative that basically brainwashed for many generations through the church and through the way we've been brought up
Sure.
that we're the only intelligent beings in the universe. I don't buy that for 1 second.
No, of course not. I think a lot of people
And, and
realize
I believe in God. That's not the issue. The issue
right,
is there, and mathematically, it's pretty much been proven that there's so many planets out there that could support intelligent life like us, or even more intelligent than us, more advanced than us, that there are as grains of sand on a beach. I mean, and they're finding with the new telescopes they've sent out into space, they're finding Earth-like planets almost daily. It's unreal. And
right.
and it turns out those mathematicians were correct. There's and they're the right distance from their sun and
Right,
everything
as
else.
far as the
So
supporting carbon-based life forms like
right.
us.
So
Yes.
if you just use your brain a little bit, the odds are there is other intelligent life out there. I mean, whether it's less intelligent than us as humans or more, we don't know. But obviously, if a species of or a race of beings is a million more advanced and a million years older than us or whatever,
Right.
obviously they may have control of vehicles that can travel through space and time. We don't know. We just don't know. But
Well,
if you come out right and say no, you're not using your brain.
well, I
You're just
think
not
that
using your brain.
that, I think that what you said, that theory that why now after so many years are they willing to do congressional hearings and all these people are coming forward, and even like when they had these balloons that were from where I don't know, China, wherever they were from, that people were like, what is this? How can that be coming over the skies? Like
Hmm.
normally, and it's part of what you were saying. We're thinking, if anything, a balloon or whatever comes over our skies, it's gonna get shot down immediately. You see all these
Yeah.
movies where they see
It
on the
should. It
radar,
should be. If it's not ours, it should be shot down.
of
I
course,
mean,
it's like way out
yeah.
there, and they're scrambling all these jet fighters to go out there, and whatever it is, if it doesn't identify itself, shoot it down.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
everybody's like, "What do you mean it's over our country? Over our landmass? What do you mean
Yeah.
it's still there?"
And they let it drift for all the way across the United States, pretty much.
Right, and I
I'm
think a
like,
lot of people were like, "What? What is that? How could that happen?"
hmm right. I didn't understand that myself. Why did they wait so long? Of course, they don't. They got to take safety into account too. They don't want
Sure.
to shoot a
No, I
missile and miss, and then
understand
it
that.
goes down and hits the ground, kill some people or
Well,
whatever.
you know what? And I
But
have no, when it comes to like weapons, I have no idea. But I'm thinking, don't they have like simple stuff like, man, it's a balloon, like puncture it, shoot it, something like
yeah,
that.
I mean,
Or
you would think so, but I mean, you're shooting anything out of a fighter. I mean, it's some serious, serious weaponry. So,
yeah, I
you
know,
know,
and that's just me like thinking, like, hey, like World War II stuff, like one of those guns. Of course,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
simplifying
yeah,
it, but
yeah.
and
But the bullets still got to come down somewhere.
yeah,
So,
I know, or like
you
waiting,
know,
but still, again, what we were saying, there's a lot of landmass here in the United States that
hmm
there's nothing out there except forest, right?
and just
But they just gotta
yeah,
go
and just
down.
imagine Russia and China. They are way bigger than us. So,
Yes,
and there's areas in those countries that nobody goes to. You
yes,
know,
exactly.
and there's all kind of accounts and stuff coming from some of those tribes and things, ancient tribes that still live out there to this day they're way far behind in modern times. I mean, they don't have cell phones or anything, and they're
Yes.
reporting things like this. So, you know,
But yeah, the things of like whether again whether you're talking a UFO or whether it's man-made or God knows what, or and then of course that coincidence of sightings,
hmm
um that and then I'm thinking also in earlier times when life was more simple, like you said, that people really had more time to observe. You understand? Because I think nowadays modern life we're so hectic that we don't have the time to like go outside and just sit there and look at the
hmm
skies. Whereas
Well, yeah,
before,
you're exactly right. Well, everybody's got their face buried in what now? That cell phone,
oh yeah,
right? So
yes,
it's all
or the
distraction.
TV, or the TV.
Or the TV, yeah, it's all distraction. I tell people all the time when I do these shows, hey, take 15 minutes, 30 minutes a day, go outside and observe the night sky, observe your
Yes,
surroundings, because you never know what you might see. Enjoy the great outdoors because people just don't do that anymore.
I
You
remember
know?
when I was growing up. I tell everybody, I remember my family after we had dinner. Of course, this is South Florida. we had some big shade trees, and everybody would sit out there in the lawn chairs and just
Yeah,
talk, just talk and
yeah.
look. I mean, no, we weren't looking for anything, obviously, but you just sat out there and took the breeze, and you'd talk, and then,
Hmm.
of course, and we did that almost daily, unless the weather permitting. But my
Right.
point being that people had more time to be present, to see things that were unusual. As in, wow, did you see that? Whereas now,
Hmm.
um, like you said, either you're looking for it, or there's a sensational aspect to it that you're trying to capture, or
Right.
you're missing it. You're missing it altogether because the phone or hey, I got this great, show that I'm binging on, and I got to
Oh
get back to
yeah.
that.
Yep.
And then by the time it's
So.
like, man, I got to go to sleep because
Yep. Yeah, that's
so
exactly how it is nowadays. Everybody's on their electronics. When I was a kid, like we played all day, every day until night
yes,
came, and then we had to go in the house, and we didn't
yep,
want to go in the house then.
of
So
course,
we'd be
yeah,
outside all day, every day in the summertime, especially,
yes,
and
yes,
we never came. We knew if we came in the house, mom would put us to work too. So
yeah,
so we
right, yeah,
stayed
no, no,
out.
it was a
You
totally
know,
different,
Yeah.
and
Now the
there's
kids are
people out
just
there that
on
want to,
video games. They're on their cell
yeah,
phones. They don't do any
yes.
activities outside hardly at all anymore.
It's a shame because I remember, yeah,
Yeah.
one Saturday morning, the cartoons were over in the morning. All the kids were out there out playing,
Oh
on
yeah.
the block. And
Yep.
like you said, come the stars, you would see all the moms calling everybody and come inside, and everybody's like, no, you still wanted to keep playing, and
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Well, we had to come and eat dinner if we didn't make it. When mom would call once, if you didn't come in, you were in trouble. So you came and ate, and then sometimes in the summer you could stay out in the front yard and play. But
yes, right,
but other than
exactly,
that, I mean, it was so
exactly.
much fun. It was fun those days. I miss those days.
Sure, sure. People don't realize, and contrary to what people think, you didn't feel deprived as a kid. It was like
No.
great.
Yep.
So, and I hate to say it, and people, I understand where people say, well, there's kids that get snatched and everything. Back then, they still had people that were predators.
Oh
I'm not
yeah.
saying that you just let your kid go, like, disappear, and
Uh-huh.
you still told your kid, if somebody comes up to you, you run away. But when you have
Right,
a group
right.
of kids hanging out together, guess what?
They're not gonna do it, yeah.
They're not gonna do it. Or if there's some dum dum, there's somebody else is gonna grab them. Go, you crazy? Where are you going? Come on, let's get
Yeah,
out of here,
I still remember when they first started putting kids' pictures on the milk cartons,
yeah,
and,
yeah.
I just thought that was crazy that, there's people snatching kids, you know?
Mhm.
But it was a real thing
Yep, yep. It
back in
was
the '70s and early '80s.
right. It's not like a lot of people think. Oh, you're thinking of nothing was wrong. No, there was stuff going on as far as weirdos and kids getting taken, and but still, you went outside and you played, and you just learned to take care of yourself as far as being aware of your surroundings. But which, by the way, a lot of the and I'm thinking to myself, when you were growing up, like you said, you had the typical movies, that kind of like is what became ingrained, with like the Dracula, the Hammer films, and then the werewolf and all that other stuff. And
Frankenstein,
Frankenstein.
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I love
And
them.
and
Love
and
them.
see, but my point
The
being that
Mummy.
the Mummy, that was great, all those
Yeah.
movies. But see, this is the thing, despite people growing up with that as a kid, the sightings that people have of cryptids do not look like what you saw growing up, because people say, well,
No.
this was embedded into your subconscious because you grew up watching these movies. And it's like, no, because, growing up, I don't remember Bigfoot, as being a made up monster. And even then, when you had the wolf man, it was a wolf man. It wasn't a
Mhm.
dog man type of
Right.
thing, you know.
It's the man that grew all this hair and had long, gangly fingers with claws and stuff.
And that was it. But he kept his clothes on, and
Yep, yep.
and that's why I'm saying I don't think it's that the sightings of either of the Bigfoot or the Dogman are offshoots from, hey, you grew up watching these movies and now people are. And I was like, no, there was nothing like that as far as those early movies that
Yeah.
that people could say, oh, no, no, totally different.
Now,
They,
the werewolf. Now, Hollywood. Obviously They make their movies based off of some of the real folklore and legends. But back in the early days, they didn't have the special effects that they do now, and
Sure.
they had to try to make these creatures as best they could with what they knew how to make them with. So, and they were nowhere near what they can do nowadays with all the latexes and different things that they can
Oh
make
no.
these creature costumes out of and special effects and whatnot. But some of this stuff is based off of ancient folklore and tales and stories, but a lot of it's totally different, like you said, with what these creatures may actually really be. So,
Oh, of
you
course,
know,
no. And let's face it, the places where some of these sightings are in the middle of nowhere. Who is going to
hmm
be out there in a high-end costume to
right.
be seen by hopefully somebody? And I'm going to give you. I'm going to tell my story, and
Well,
I want
unfortunately,
my
there's
audience.
people that will go out in the woods and film stuff to try to get famous, like I said. But
Uh,
if you look at the original footage of the Patterson Gimlin film,
yeah,
okay, and that was, I think, what, 67 or whatever. That was before I was even born. But I never even heard of it until I was like 12.
right.
After I had my sighting, and then I started looking into this stuff. But that they did not have any kind of movie special effects or anything that would even come close to making a
No,
costume
there wasn't.
that good. And I mean, you can see muscle striations in that creature as it's walking, and you can see the muscles flex and everything. And it was a female, and she had
Yeah,
breasts.
that's right. That's the
So,
thing that's so
and the
unusual.
only thing they had was these old cheap monkey suits, and you
Yes.
could totally tell the difference in that. When I mean, a totally night and day. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the most legitimate piece of evidence that's ever been captured of a Bigfoot
Yes.
that we know of. I mean, I'm sure there's some other stuff out there that would blow people's minds and stuff. And I've seen some pretty crazy pics and stuff off of game cams and stuff sent to me from people. And but unfortunately, that's their property, and I can't do anything with it unless they give me permission. So,
Exactly.
you know, recordings wise, I've got some of my own recordings and other recordings that have been sent to me that were, that we sent off and had analyzed by vocal experts in the wildlife regime, and said they came back as not any known creature on this planet.
Right.
So
They
when
can
you get stuff
now
like
with
that,
computers, they can cross-reference these
right?
recordings,
And they
you know.
measure the hertz and the vocal patterns and everything else. So, when you get some good, that's good hard evidence to me. So, when I got a wildlife expert of 40, 50 years tell me that's something from not anything we've ever documented on this planet before. So that's pretty fascinating when you
That's
get
what you
stuff
hear
like that.
even from outdoorsmen and,
hmm
hunters that are really familiar with the noises that animals make, let's say, in their area, and they'll
hmm
say, "I've heard all," and they'll report these calls or these screams or whatever that they're like, "That's not an animal," and I've been in the woods for
hmm
years.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I've hunted and fished in West Virginia in my whole life, and I pretty much know every animal there is to know out there. And when I had my encounter, that changed my life. And it was the sound that thing made is blood curdling, and it's damn near the scariest thing I've ever encountered in my life. And it changed my life. So I try to, unless someone's actually had that experience, it's hard to even relay that story to them without them having experience. They just don't know what you're talking about. It's just it is what it is. You can share it all day, but until someone has an experience of that magnitude in their lives, they just don't comprehend what you're saying. So it is what it is. But for me, I love hearing other people's stories, their encounters, their sightings, and I share mine with them as well. And I write about them in the books because I go out looking for this stuff, and sometimes I find some crazy stuff.
oh, I
So
bet. I
you
bet
know,
you find
and sometimes, more times than not, you don't find anything. But there's those magical moments when stuff, when stuff happens. It could be a haunting situation, a
yes.
UFO investigation, or a cryptid investigation. You just never know what you're going to get when you go out there doing this stuff.
Well, I've told this story before, I was a practicing hypnotherapist for many years, and I had over the years, I got really interesting calls having to do, and there was one time where a guy calls me on the phone, and I could tell he was being real cautious, and he was a referral from one of my old clients. and he didn't really. He, he gave me a name, and I'm sure it wasn't even a made up name. And I had done hypnotherapy for people to remember things because people would come to me because they had put stuff away and they couldn't remember where they put it. And he calls me
Mhm.
up and he asked me if I could make him forget something. And I was like, that's weird. I said, no, I can't. I can help you remember stuff. And people would come to me also like with taking exams. You know how some people go blank. I would help
Mhm.
people like to so that memory retention, so the anxiety wouldn't black out. I said, no, I go, but why do you want to do that? I'm thinking, what in the world? This is the story this man tells me. He's telling me he's going down this road at night, and it must have been some type of rural area because he says, I was really careful because he was afraid of deer jumping out in front of his car. So he says, I
Mhm.
was going slow. It was in the middle of nowhere. And because I asked him, I kind of, and I guess since it was over the phone, he wasn't worried about. You could tell he was, when somebody's really wigged out about something, but hey, this person really doesn't know who I am. And he
Mhm.
tells me that as he's driving down, all of a sudden, sure enough, he starts coming up and he sees, I guess there was trees on either side of the road, like a tree line on either side.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
he sees this deer break out of the tree line and come up towards the road. And so he's saying, I slowed down because, here it is. And he says this thing jumps off, crosses the road, and he sees something come. And he says, whatever it was, something was chasing it because that thing was like coming off the tree line and jumped the road. And there was like, I guess, a slight embankment coming up to the road. And he says that all of a sudden he sees something coming up behind and he says, sure enough. And he's thinking, what is it? And he saw he says, it was on all fours till it came to the road, and then it got up on two hind legs and it crossed the road in front of me. And he says
Yep.
by then he had put the car, he had stopped the car. He wasn't rolling. He was stopped the car, and he described a dog man. And he says it was chasing, and then got down once it got on the other side of the road, and it went off after the deer. Believe it or not, this guy wanted me to hypnotize him to forget that event. He was so wigged out. He told me,
Of course,
I can't
because
sleep.
it defies everything we've been taught. You know.
He was like, he couldn't wrap his head around it. He says, after you talk to somebody and they realize, I think also people are worried that you're going to go, oh, you crackpot, you saw what? Ha ha. Ha." And I told him,
Right.
look, I've, it kind of, I settled him down. I said, look, believe it or not, I have heard of similar experiences. I'm not going to tell you who.
Mhm.
And he was like, you have? And I said, yeah. And this was,
Yeah.
I want to say when I got that guy called me back like in '09, 2000, 2009 was around the time period he called me. And you could see almost a sigh of relief, like, what, you've heard of this? Like people seeing stuff like this? I go, yes. I go, I
Mhm.
have. I can't tell you exactly, but it's not like you're like, and he's like, Mo, and he's like talking about this guy was having, his reality had shifted so hard for him
Mhm. When
that
you have an experience like that, it's life changing. And
he
that's the
was,
reason
and
I
I made
do
him
what I do.
forget. And
Right.
you know what? He wanted to go back to the person he had been before he saw that. In other words, I want to go back to that bliss where something
Mhm.
like that, you only see it in a movie.
Mhm. Well,
Because
what's the main factor here? Fear is a very powerful tool, right? Fear, the unknown is, and people, have reported like some of these military members that have had these, that were part of these special teams that would go out and recover these downed UFOs. Old Clifford Stone, the Sergeant Clifford Stone, was a member of one of those units, and he talked about how several of his friends committed suicide after they had gone out and done that because they realize now everything they taught was a lie. Everything they've been taught was an outright lie, and they couldn't handle the truth that, hey, there's other unknown species out there, of
sure,
intelligent beings,
yeah, like
and
what if this there's someone else out there?
they killed themselves, you know,
Yes, yes,
and it's happened many times. When people have it's a life changing experience, some kind of encounter or sighting, and it defies everything they've ever been taught.
yes,
With whether
yes.
it's religious in their religious beliefs or their
Mhm.
everyday lives, some people just have a major mental breakdown because of it, and that's one of the I think that is one of the reasons why the government doesn't come out and tell the whole truth on these things. They've been drip feeding it to us for many years through movies and other things like that. And I'm not saying everything the government does is nefarious, but
Right,
sometimes
but
it
yeah,
is. Sometimes it is for other reasons. And not
right,
everybody in the government's bad people. I mean, I worked for the government for 20 years, and I've seen
right.
some of the heinous stuff that was done and different things. But not everybody in that works for the government is bad people. So it and there's been countless suicides in the paranormal field as well.
Yes, I have heard of
So
that. And I think that what happens, Dave, is that once people have this sighting, it's like, if this exists, what else is there? In other words, it's swinging that
absolutely,
door open to like, oh man, nothing
they
is
open the door to Pandora's box, man, and
my
once that's open,
reality is anything but what I thought it was.
mhm,
And
because like we said earlier in the show, how many times do people go out nowadays and just go in the woods for a walk? Never,
yes,
hardly ever.
no,
Only
no,
people that do that are hardcore fishermen and hunters nowadays.
yes,
Otherwise, they go do their 9 to 5. They're on that cell phone to and from work. When they get home from work, they're watching TV, dealing with the kids, the job, whatever normal
yes,
life situations is, and they just don't go out in those situations.
yes. But when they
So,
have that encounter, to how can I say, and I know it also has a lot to do with personality styles. Some people can handle it. They're disturbed, but they can handle it. And then there's
hmm
others that it's like, okay, like in other words, my world, the way the construct that I have in my head so I can function is now so totally like that I can't I don't like what is any of this that been brought up to believe? Is it really real? What else is out
right,
there? I mean, it's like,
yeah,
when your mind doesn't stop. And I think that's
right.
what
What else
drives
have we
me.
not been told about that they know about? So
Right. Am I
you
am
know
I
they.
going and the next thing you're gonna is they're gonna this is gonna come out and that's gonna come out and because
hmm
some personalities need like a certain amount of certainty in their life. Like I know this
hmm
is only something in the movies, you know?
Yeah, right.
And
You're exactly right. Some people are just not built to handle something like
yes.
of that magnitude. So,
And whether like you were saying, maybe they're building up to that eventually, some type of disclosure for us. Maybe afraid that we're gonna go, huh? What? Or maybe for some
yeah,
other nefarious purposes, using, in other words, using the UFO things. And but I've heard, through different interviews that I've heard that even that there's been some supposed suicides or really suicides of people in the ufology field that were coming close to getting actual concrete truths that they didn't want to have let out. And all of a sudden, these researchers, scientists, even military guys, all of a sudden, for some unknown reason, commit suicide. You know,
yeah. Some of
uh,
them, some of them committed suicide, but not all of them.
right? Exactly. Yeah,
Some of them were
exactly.
suicided.
Suicided. Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or what they
So,
say, like Epstein, or whatever. That's which even is
right.
a
Yeah.
more
And that,
modern thing. But
there's several famous cases of that. That this guy named Snyder, he's a government contractor and they're drilling these, using these new nuclear drills that were drilling through solid granite and stuff. And according to him, they opened up this cavern on accident. They didn't even know it was in the mountain or whatever. And they got down in it, and these drills were super top secret because they were nuclear powered, and nobody had those. So they
mhm,
had special forces units with them to guard these atomic drills or nuclear drills, right? And when they opened this cavern, they got down in it and were looking around like, well, this is crazy. Next thing you know, he said there was like an 8 foot alien being in there. And they were looking around. There's all these rooms. And then they looked and they saw human body parts like in a pot type of
oh,
situation. And these things were obviously killing people. So next thing you know, they had this firefight. And he said a special forces guy jumped in front of him and got killed and saved his life. But he had like 3 blown off fingers and all these scars and stuff where he got hit by this beam of
mhm,
light from this thing, but he was able to escape. And he said, then more of the special forces guys were in there fighting, and all of them got killed. And they were out there, and so he was going around on the UFO circuit telling his story. Next thing you know, they found he went into hiding. He was getting all these death threats, and he went into hiding and they found him in a chair with a, that, when they give you a shot or they take your blood and they wrap that surgical cord around you,
Yeah,
like
tourniquet.
that
Yeah,
rubber,
one of those
yeah,
rubber
the
things. Yeah.
tourniquet, the rubber thing. They found that wrapped around his neck like 4 or 5 times, and he was sitting in a chair, and he was obviously beat up really bad, and said he committed suicide. Now, come on.
Right. Some coroner was told, "You're gonna
Yeah.
put that," or some ME, that medical examiner. By the way, that's what
Mhm.
I want you to sign that and say that the cause of death was ligature, self-inflicted ligature, or
Mhm,
whatever.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and that's just one of numerous cases like that. So,
Yes, and you
um,
know what? And anybody that's around there that's looking, saying, "I'm not gonna, I don't want to be the next one on the chopping block. Let me just walk away from this." You know, anybody's gonna say, and of course, and this is the thing. Think about it, Dave. When you listen to that story, and there's something there that makes you think. You would think some of these guys is like, let him go because he's talking a lot of, people are going to listen to this guy and think he's crazy.
mhm,
But then the fact that they're doing that means that they're afraid that this is going to
mhm,
come to the ears of somebody. Because when you listen to that story on the face of it, think about it. Firefight, and there's, there are aliens that are eating humans. It's like, man, this is a great script for a movie.
well, see,
Don't worry.
there's an old story with that, with I think it was Truman supposedly went to Roswell, disappeared for 2 days, or went to
Right.
not
Yes.
Roswell, but Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico, and had a
Hmm.
whole new sit down with these aliens, and they agreed to let them take a certain amount of abduct a certain amount of the human population and do experiments on them for in trade for technology.
Right.
So,
That's like quid pro
so,
quo.
and people say, well, man, that didn't happen, this and that. But guess what? All of a sudden, right after Roswell, when all this went down and all that went down, guess what we were developing? The stealth bombers, the stealth fighters, night vision goggles, um, microchip technology, all kinds of things that were not even heard of. And that all happened right after these incidents. So if you just use your noggin, it makes a lot of sense,
Like
and it
right
all
immediate. Like,
falls into place. So, you
now,
know,
you know what? You wanna see an outraged population? If that ever came out.
oh yeah.
Not just the UFO extraterrestrial disclosure. If it ever came out that had done something like that, which is, we're gonna let you basically use humans for whatever, eat them, hybrid them, whatever, dissect them,
Hmm. Yep.
talk about you, yeah, they would have, see, that's the kind of stuff that a government would say. If that ever came out, that would
Hmm.
be really bad for
Well,
us.
think about this too. So it's a known fact that the Nazis were 100 years more advanced than us in
Yes.
technology. Okay, during World War II, they already had jet fighter technology toward the end of the war. They were developing it. They had numerous functioning jet fighters, and so many other things. Their tanks and everything else were way more advanced than us. And it's known fact that they had what they called the Vril Society, that
Yes,
was a supernatural society, and it was said that they were communicating with alien entities. Okay,
that's right.
so when we came in, and us and the Russians came in, we overtook them. Obviously, everybody knows what happened. All of a sudden, we gathered all their intelligence, took what we could. Our soldiers obviously took
Right.
their technology, because we're gonna. I mean, in any situation like that, the conquering army is going to take any
Yeah,
technology they have and
sure.
use it if they can. So both us and the Russians took whatever they could from those Nazi scientists, and then heck, we took most of the captured Nazi scientists and brought them back here to the
And
states, and
integrated,
they
right, Operation
and they
Rainbow.
built the atomic bomb and everything else. And
And now,
they
did
developed a whole space program through NASA. They were all Nazi scientists. So they had something there that, obviously put them way advanced than anybody
well,
else on the planet.
think about it. This is after World War One. Germany got spanked hard.
Oh
Okay,
yeah. Yep.
their economy, because of, what they were being punished basically for World War One.
Right.
They had problems with starvation. Their economy was ruined. How do you go from that to developing that
Hmm.
type of scientific stuff, like you said, that
Hmm.
where we in the United States couldn't, in basically what, 15 years?
And
You
they
know,
knew things too, because they actively would send out massive search parties for these ancient artifacts that
yes,
were supposedly
yes,
on Earth. And they were looking for they were looking for the Ark of the Covenant. all over the world.
Yes.
They were looking for all these different artifacts. And who's to say they didn't get some of them? So,
Sure, right. For all the
and gain.
science, the hard science stuff that they were doing, they had a very,
Mhm.
very big interest in it. Anything that was anything. They didn't care what
Yep,
culture it was. If it had some type of supernatural power, especially
yep,
like a
they were
relic
into it.
or something, they wanted to track it down
Yeah.
and study it, take it, use it. So makes you think they had some type of success
Oh yeah.
with some type of artifact or whatever or
Yeah, it's
instructions.
fascinating stuff,
It
and then it
is.
makes sense that it just carried on through us, and then we gained that knowledge of how to communicate with these ETs or whatever they were, and then therefore we struck a deal with them and took over from where the
Yeah.
Nazis did. So,
And let me tell you something, that would be can you imagine that part of yeah, part of what we got with Operation Paperclip was the ability to basically set up a communication line with these and then it makes you
mhm.
think, how did the Germans what was the portal? And I mean, we could go and then do another show about as
Oh,
far as
oh yeah.
demonic
I mean, there's
entities
so much to it.
versus, you
There's
know,
so much to it. But a lot,
yeah,
what fascinates me about the whole thing is it all lines up perfectly,
yes.
and if you just use your noggin a little bit and think about it, well, that makes sense and that makes sense because this happened and that happened. Look what happened after that. And then, you just use your brain a little bit.
But you know what? I think the difference is exactly what you said, Dave. I think people have been seeing that, but I'm going to say some of the people that during the years would become out, I think that a lot of times they were smeared. Like that they would
Oh,
hire
yeah,
people in the media to
definitely.
smear them and make them sound like you're cuckoo, you're crazy. The ones that they didn't kill, in other words,
Of
that
course. Yeah.
guy, we need, don't pay attention to him. He's like one of those
Yep.
guys.
Yep.
And but now people and the other rest of the population was like, "No, the government would never do that. No." You know, and now people are like be saying, "Wait a minute. I hate to think of it, but yeah, they could do something like that."
Well, and they've pitched the narrative for so many generations when it comes to the world's major religions. If you don't do this, this, and this, guess what? Your
Yes,
soul's going to burn in hell. And what
yes,
is that? That's fear. That's a powerful
of
tool.
course.
And if you've done it for so many generations, and
Yes,
you're taught that as a young child, you're basically brainwashed to say, hey, oh my God, I got to do this, or I'm gonna be in the fires of eternal hell. And I just don't, for me personally, I just don't buy that, because I believe in God. I believe in a higher spiritual being and good intent in people, and that's really all you have to do to be in good graces. If you have good
sure,
intentions and you don't hurt people intentionally,
exactly.
um, you don't have to donate a third of your salary to the church, and you don't have to go
Correct.
to a mainstream church where you see the main preacher driving around in a Lamborghini, while you're sitting there struggling to buy groceries.
Exactly.
I think it was a brainwashing technique that dates back to the Anunnaki people, the
Yeah,
ancient beings that supposedly came here. It's a draconian system. We're all under in this world a draconian system where it's
mhm,
about money, power, and greed, and it's
yeah,
controlled
and
by
that's how you
higher
control. Yeah.
intelligent beings. And
Well,
then they have their human cronies that carry out their mission, for them.
I don't wanna say it was Egypt because it wasn't Egypt, but it was another ancient civilization. I can't remember which one. They were going and they found some temple artifacts. And, of course, you know that in these civilizations, the
Atlantis.
priests it was no, no, no. It was like an actual whether you believe in Atlantis, it was somewhere in the Middle East. It was one like Canaanite. Well, I don't know. I don't know. It was one of
Yeah.
these ancient civilizations. They found the temple and the artifacts and everything. And in those times, the priest class was just as powerful as the rulers. And they had
Hmm.
found that where they had these statues of whatever their idols were, which were very big, and the ones that were, they would make it so that they could put in a fire so that smoke would come out the nostrils of the statue. In other words, all these statues in the temples and things were made to look so that when the regular person came in there and
Oh
he
yeah,
sneezed
they
and
trick them. Yeah.
the smoke blows out the nostrils of the
Hmm.
statue and all these things that people are like, oh. And of course they use that across the board because like you said, the fear
Yeah, they
and
actually cut tubes into some of those, and they can make noises and
right
growl and all kinds of stuff, and they
and
act like
all that
you've pissed
stuff.
off of the gods. Now you're in big trouble.
right, or you better make an offering, or guess
Uh-huh.
what? Your crops are gonna like.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
trickery and all that has been used for thousands of years.
sure, sure. And you get people scared enough and like, like I said, whether it's in the afterlife, whether it's your soul, or for example, they said like the Druids, back in the even pre-Roman times, when they existed, the class of the Druids was they were like basically the judges, the priests. And around Halloween they would do this thing where they would go. We call it Halloween, but it was an important date for them in their calendar.
It's a winter solstice usually.
Right. They would go, it was either they would go house to house begging for stuff, with things. If you didn't give them whatever it was, I imagine back then it had to be food or something or something. Guess what? The fear was, oh, something could happen to your crops. They could burn down, or your cows could get sick, or your livestock. And I'm thinking to
Hmm.
myself, and by the way, the Druids were exempt from military service and from a lot of the laws.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only just the afterlife that you could be in trouble with. It could be your present living, which would go south if you didn't, if you weren't on board with whoever was currently, basically maneuvering or in charge of the religious aspect of whatever it was,
Oh
the
yeah, absolutely.
civilization, the town, the whatever. Anyway, Dave, it has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. And I could
You
keep talking
too.
to you. Well, are you planning any new books, anything for 2023 or what?
Well, yeah, I'm planning on releasing my West Virginia Hauntings Volume 2, and
Mhm.
probably 3 because they're pretty much both done. Probably a new Bigfoot book come out sometime this year,
Okay.
called The Monongahela Monster. And lots of events I'll be speaking at around the country this year.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of updating all that right now. That'll be out in the next day or two on my website. My
Okay.
website's www.davespinks.paranormalinvestigator.com. You can get all my books off of Amazon or in my
Okay.
store, Dave Spinks World of Weird here in Richwood, West Virginia. If you haven't ever been to the store, I highly recommend it. I call it my 8,000 square feet of paranormal madness and metaphysical madness because my girlfriend and I. She has crystals in there, sage, everything you need.
Okay.
We're getting some more. We're going to be having ghost hunting equipment for sale in there very soon. But we have T-shirts, hats, all my books, movies I'm in, other paranormal movies, my friends'
Okay.
books that are authors like such as Stan Gordon, Lyle Blackburn, Ken Gerhardt, Johnny
Mhm.
Zathis, many more authors of the paranormal and people that have been doing this a long, long time. And then we have local artisans that make merchandise for us.
Okay.
Everything from Bigfoot clocks to you name it, man. We got toys for kids, alien bendies and Bigfoot bendies, and we have real Native American stuff in there like necklaces and
Is
uh,
it not from China, right?
nothing from China. No.
No, well, no, no, no. I'm talking about the Native American, that they
Yeah,
say,
we have the real deal. We have a couple shaman friends from different tribes that make us various medicine bags,
oh,
necklaces,
wow.
and pouches, and all kinds of cool stuff in there. We
Oh,
have some authentic drums that are made out of bear skin and deer skin in there.
like, I
Um,
have my
oh,
drum right up here, and nobody can see it, but I still have my
mhm.
drum. That drum is about 15 years old. It's a very
Oh yeah.
simple drum, but it's not it's man-made. It's not manufactured in a factory, okay?
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah, we have
um,
stickers, you name it. We got a bunch of different cool stuff. It's all monster, cryptid related, haunting related, and UFO related in the store. So I have a Zoltar in there. I have a 9.5 foot tall dog man and an 8.5 foot tall Bigfoot that the Bigfoot was made for me for the store.
okay.
Just really cool stuff and more coming.
That
We
is
have
great.
our second MonsterCon event is at the store April 28th, 29th, and 30th here in Richwood. We'll have guest speakers such as Stan Gordon. Um, let's see who else is coming. Barry Gaunt from the Night Stalkers from Kentucky. Eric Altman out of Southwest PA. Dr. Raymond Keller out of he's a PhD at West Virginia University. Writes all kind of UFO books. He used to hang out with Gray Barker and some of the OGs. They were shot teenage friends. Um, Ron Murphy will be speaking as well. Myself, Serenity Jenny, and then we have our local wild man, Wild Bill from Mountain Monsters will be hanging out at the store all day. So,
Okay.
when we have the
That
speakers
is
will be speaking in City Hall, we'll have Wild Bill at the store. There'll be tarot readings and all kinds of fun stuff going on, and Reiki healing and everything you can
mhm.
think of the whole weekend. Vendors from all over. Um, so the whole town gets involved too. It's a lot of fun. Like the restaurants make Bigfoot burgers and they serve.
Oh, you're
Um,
kidding, really?
oh no, it's a
That
lot
is
of
great.
fun. We did our first one was last year and it went off really well. We had over 700 people from 7 states come. I think it's going to be double that this year,
Yeah,
if not
yeah.
more.
People
So
are
I mean,
happy
they
there.
serve Braxy beer and Bigfoot beer and Sasquatch beer and Mothman beer in the restaurant. It's a lot of fun.
Of
So and
course.
the local chill out grill store. It's like a Dairy Queen. They make Mothman avalanches and all kind of cool stuff.
Oh my
So
god.
it's a lot of fun, and we're growing it. We're growing it. So it's the store is awesome. Like I said, it's 8,000 square feet of everything you can think of in there,
Oh,
paranormal wise. We got a real Zoltar machine in there, all kind of cool stuff.
everybody does for those people that don't know, Zoltar is one of those fortune telling machines that they used to
Yeah.
have at, carnivals and stuff like that.
Oh, I love Zoltar. It's so cool.
That is so cool. It is.
And
Thank you.
my particular Zoltar is pretty cool because it's actually kind of a semi-famous one. It used to set out in front of the Excalibur Casino in Vegas for many, many years,
Are you
and
serious?
yeah, they were doing construction there, and some guy ran over it with a backhoe on accident. So I had been in contact with the people that make the Zoltars for years because I've been trying to get one, and it was like 4 years that went by, and I hadn't heard nothing back. And the guy calls me. He said, "Dude, I got one for you." He goes, let me tell you the whole story. And he told me about it and said it got
Uh-huh.
trashed and they were going to have them refurbish it. But instead, they just went and got a whole new one. So they traded that one for the new one. And then they refurbished the whole thing. And I got a brand new Zoltar except for the cabinet,
What a great
which they
story.
redid it all. I mean, you can't even tell. It looks brand new. And I've got that sitting in my store and you can come and get your fortune
Let me
from
tell you
Zoltar.
something though. How long was it out there? If that Zoltar could talk, what would it say
Oh,
about
yeah,
what it
man. It was out there
saw?
for years. They said, yeah, years and years.
Yeah, it
So,
saw a lot
it
of
even
stuff.
had some. I still got some of the original Excalibur tickets from it, from the inside of it.
wow, that
So
is
it's pretty cool.
incredible. That is so neat. Again, what are the
Yeah.
dates on that again? That event?
September, or I mean, I'm sorry, April 28th is VIP night. So you have to have a VIP ticket to hang out with all of the speakers, and we feed you and everything. And then you get front row seats to the speakers all day Saturday, and you get a T-shirt. So you get like a little swag bag
Is
with
this
it.
like a weekend event or
Yeah, it's a weekend event, and then
okay, okay.
Saturday all day, all the guest speakers will be speaking at City Hall, and you can come to the store and go to the restaurants, and it's the whole town's involved. And I don't know if we're going to do Sunday. I have to decide yet, but
Okay,
usually we do a 3 day for the vendors. But the vendors will be open all day Saturday too.
okay.
Um, so yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we're growing it. So
That is fantastic. I wanna wish you the best of luck, and I will be following up with you when your other books come out.
well, I
But it has
appreciate
been a
it.
pleasure to speak to you, Dave. Take care.
All right, you too. Take you. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Have a good night.
Likewise. See, that's what I like to hear. Everybody's up to here when it comes to the COVID stuff of, all the cons, all the paracons, all the comic cons, everything was put in the no, it's not. Well, it wasn't even the back burner. They disappeared, and unfortunately, a lot of them never came back. Anything, all these events. It didn't even have to be as big as a Paracon or one of these con things, Comic Cons. Even smaller events got sidelined, wiped out. And I'm really happy to hear that these things are coming back because, believe it or not, besides sounds like a blast, people, this is where you network. This is where you network. And if he was closer, I would probably go to it, unfortunately, because I have so many animals and the feeding and everything, I can't be gone. Otherwise, I would love to go. And the truth is, I don't have anybody that I trust well enough to feed my animals the way they should. And you may think, well, how difficult can it be? Yeah, but it's one of those things. But yeah, I'm glad to see that networking and this is where you get to have a what was it a Bigfoot avalanche or a Mothman avalanche at the, as an ice cream treat. I love those stories. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, the day my water oak went down, I had gone to something here in Florida called the Strawberry Festival. And this is a 1 week festival that's been held here since the 1930s. And it only stopped for 6 years during World War II. And the I want to say the what I really liked about it, besides that it was like an open air festival, like that carnival, is that sometimes this stuff goes away, and there's kind of like, I want to say, a certain nostalgia to it, where it was like you walk around and there's vendors and there's foods and there's funnel cakes, and of course there was a lot of strawberries and everything that you could think of. As a matter of fact, here, oh look what I happen to have on my desk. Wait a minute. Oh wait, you can't see it. Let me see. There we go. Parkdale Parksdale Farm Market. Okay, they're in Plant City, Florida. This is where the festival was at. And it's old fashioned goodness. They're made of strawberry cookies. They're great. They're fantastic. Yes, this was something that I bought there. Say it's almost gone a week later, week and a half later. But yeah, I think that's great. Besides how helping out the local economy and the local vendors, you actually get to walk around and you talk to people and they talk to you and you talk to vendors and you buy stuff that you cannot go to any chain store and buy it. You're not going to find it at any chain store. All right. In other words, this is not a mass production kind of thing. And I love that. I really, really, really love that. And that concept of, where you have the store and God, I, I would love to go. Maybe I can figure out some way, to get a couple of days and go up there to West Virginia in April. Maybe I got to do some logistics here. But anyway, guys, I really hope you like this show. I thought it was fascinating to speak to Dave because for a lot of people that might not be familiar with him, even though he's been a lot of shows and podcasts and everything, he's had his own personal encounters with the Bigfoot. He's been a paranormal investigator for many years. I mean, it's not strictly that he's done investigations into cryptids and UFOs. He's also had paranormal investigations. And at one time, one of the prior interviews that we did, we were talking about, he goes, yeah, there comes a time that people don't realize when you do paranormal work, you got to take time off. Okay. And this, I'm talking about ghost hunting. He says it gets so much that, and I mentioned this before, where you have to step back from it and not do anything with it and step back for months, he says, because it kind of, and I've mentioned this before, it bleeds over into your regular life. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're ghost hunting or being asked about it 24/7. And it's like, that's not good because, and I don't know if some of you are familiar with it. One of the everybody's really familiar now with the Skinwalker show that came out. I think it's in its third season or something like that. But prior to that, George Knapp and a couple of researchers had put out a book about the time they spent in there prior to the people that are there now, where they experienced something called a hitchhiker effect, where in essence, people that were there, scientists, even I've heard security personnel, that basically weren't really, they were just there doing, like I said, security. They weren't even, had started having things come home with them as far as poltergeist type activity. I understand some of them actually had sightings of very disturbing things happen to them. So much so that they even had personnel that at some point even refused to go back to the ranch. They didn't, it was like, I'm not going back there. I'm not going back there because what they experienced was so, in other words, it wasn't like, oh, I heard something drop in the kitchen. I wonder what that is. It could be anything. They had like very undeniable phenomena, um, either auditory stuff that they heard or felt in, or even saw, from what I understand. Um, that point in case being that, that does happen when you do paranormal work. If you get too engrossed in it and you don't draw a boundary, a very strict boundary, because, and the reason why people don't realize is that, well, Even if I smudge myself or I do my prayers or I do protection and whatever, nothing. Stop. This is the thing. When you, even if you do that, when you're doing the paranormal work or after you finish a case, there's something on a vibrational metaphysical level that when you're consumed with this, let's say at home, you're not actively on a case, you start vibrating a certain vibration where you kind of like draw these things in. Okay. Because there's no boundary. You don't stop thinking about it. You're like, um, you're not living your life. How's that? Especially when it comes to the dead, paranormal work. And you'll even hear about even people that are in ufology or to do cryptids or anything where once they really get into these fields, they realize, man, certain things start happening that before weren't happening. Before I got into this research, none of this was happening. And some of them realize, man, I got to step back a little bit from this and like let it ease away because basically you're vibrating on this level, on this metaphysical level that kind of is like a call out to have either bring in these things or manifest them or something. It's like you put out a little like light out there, like, and that's why that's one of the conversations that Dave and I had on a prior show, where especially with the paranormal work and investigating hauntings and intelligent hauntings, there comes a moment where you say, I'm going to take a vacation from this. Like, and when I mean a vacation, I mean a real vacation, as in, I'm not going to consult. Don't ask my opinion. Not because even by extension, you're getting wrapped up in that work. I'm not going to listen to EVPs. I'm not going to look at film. I'm not going to, in other words, when people like this, they send you film or, oh, if you see this or if you see that, did you hear something? None of that. You got like really, really, really step away from it because it's like a magnet to steel kind of thing. And and I'm sure people have seen it on the shows, how you have some investigators that end up with attachments or just weird stuff. And I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, especially where you go, but you'd be surprised. A lot of these investigators, if you really talk to them or if you get the real skinny, they'll tell you, yeah, you know what, prior to that full blown attachment that things went nuclear, there was already stuff happening. And instead of me stopping what I was doing, and by this way, I'm not saying quit. I'm not saying quit that. But instead of me stepping away from it and let's saying let a couple of months go by and I'm not going to go to any investigations, I'm not going to go to any cemeteries, I'm not, none of that. I kept on. And basically it escalated. And then all of a sudden I couldn't ignore it anymore. And then, you know, I had this real big problem on my hands kind of thing. So come back. I have a lot of great guests lined up. New ones, people like Dave who are bringing out new books, new research, things of that nature. Link to his website will be on the credits of the show. And again, look me up on Substack. I have a newsletter on there, Marlene's newsletter. You can go to mppellicer.com and have a link there. You can go to Miami Ghost Chronicles and have a link there. And of course, links to the audio, the podcast, no commercial interruptions. And you can find me anywhere. If you go to Miami Ghost Chronicles, it'll show you all the video platforms. Plus, I'm on all the podcast platforms can think of. You know, there's a version of either Stories of the Supernatural or Nightshade Diary or Supernatural Storytime and Eerie News, etc., etc., etc. So until next time, you guys, you're all absolutely wonderful, and I look forward to seeing you again. Till then.